Today we will discuss food addiction, eating disorders, and recovery from these. I'm speaking with Michelle Petties, TED speaker and the author of award-winning book, Living Large, The Stories of a Food Addict. After decades of struggle with food addiction, Michelle discovered the power of rewriting her food story and now helps others do the same through storytelling, coaching, and workshops. Michelle, I'm so glad we can speak about this topic today.
First of all, Henrietta, I want to thank you for holding space for this conversation. These conversations around addiction and recovery, and especially being open to talking about food addiction, because I get the question often: how can you be addicted to food? How can you be addicted to something that we have to have in order to live? Right. So I think about that in the early days when I was asked that question. It threw me a little bit, because that my book came out in 2021, and the name of it is Living Large: The Stories of a Food Addict.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, put it in the description.
Well, when I wrote that book, there's some things I didn't know what I know now about food or about addiction. And had I known it in 2021 when I released the book, the title might have been different. The title might have been Living Large: The Stories of a Processed Food Addict.
Yeah.
Because it is a real distinction, is that the stuff that they call processed food isn't even really food. It's just stuff. It's just stuff that people eat. It's just stuff that our bodies and our brain treats like drugs. It's a lab experiment, really. And so that's where that addiction piece comes in. And we don't need processed food in order to live. In fact, processed food makes it more difficult for us to live healthy. It actually leads to our demise. It leads to disease. It leads to illness. It leads to ill health. It leads to all of those things. Whereas food, we need food to live, but we need fresh fruits and vegetables, high quality protein, and healthy fats. That's what we need. First of all, be able to make that distinction and to know this is food, it will heal me. This is not food, it will hurt me. This is food, it will cure me. This is not food, it will kill me. This is food, it is good for me. This is not food, it is dangerous, it is unhealthy, it is poison.
And this is what most people don't learn early in life.
I was 60 years old before I looked up the definition of food.
How did you get to that point?
This battle around food addiction and my weight is one that I struggle with all of my life. Well, all of my life. Let me just say this, really consciously from the time I was 20 until the time I was 60, which is 40 years. So I would lose 30 pounds, I would gain 40, lose 40, gain 50, lose 50, gain 60. It's a cycle. I, as a Black woman, endure like so many other Black women. 4 out of 5 African-American women are either overweight or obese, but it is not a problem that is exclusive to us. The rest of the world is right on our heels. So I struggle with that, as a professional, as someone who was able to achieve really just great success in my career and felt real confident in my work and my ability to get things done, and could never ever understand why I could have such success. Right? I'm a smart person, but just be a complete failure when it came to food and my weight. It was just this struggle of every time I'm going into a meeting wondering before I even open the doors, am I going to be the biggest one in the room? Is there going to be somebody else in the room bigger than me? And then have to fight through my thoughts and feelings about that before I ever step up and do the job, right? So I got to go through that layer. I have to go through that layer of stuff. I had gone through surgery and gotten down to a size that I thought was manageable. I had gotten down to a 14, what I call a Black woman's 10. So I was like happy with that. But I was starting to gain the weight back. And when I say I had surgery, I didn't have gastric bypass or a lap band. What I did way too many rounds of liposuction. There's way too much of that.
Basically, just trying to manage the symptoms.
Exactly.
Very surface level.
Very surface level. But I didn't know it was surface level. I had no idea that it was just surface. But I was willing to try anything. I can get to this size, I can maintain it. But I had no idea what that meant, right? And so I maintained it for a little while, but then I started to gain the weight back. And I was horrified. I was I was struggling. I was like, why? What don't I understand? And I had been going to a wellness doctor for some other issues, and she had told me that she had a program that would help me. And I was at a very low point, and I went to her office and I said, let me try it, right? Let me try yet another program. And Henrietta, I don't know what your faith is. I don't know what anybody's faith is that is, part of this audience. But when I went to the doctor's office this time, I prayed. And as much as I had struggled with this issue, I never prayed about it. And I just said, God, help me understand. Help me understand what I'm missing. Help me understand what I don't know, because there's something I'm not making the connection with when it comes to food. And so I said that prayer and I let it go, right? I let it go. And the doctor gave me this 500-calorie plan with some shots. And I knew I could do it because I had done it many times, right? It wasn't, can I stick to this plan? It is, can I not gain the weight back? How do I do that? Yeah. And so I'm following the plan. I'm doing really well. And I go to the doctor and she's, it's like, you're doing good. And I'm like, okay, give me my shots, whatever. And one day I was at home. I wanted to eat something. And it just came over me. Why do I want to eat? Because I had been following this plan. The doctor said I wouldn't be hungry. If I take the shots, I follow this plan, I won't be hungry. Why do I want to eat right now? It was a 500-calorie diet. That was really limited to a small amount of protein and a small amount of certain vegetables. Okay. And that's it, right? Certain vegetables, certain green vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, protein, and maybe an apple, maybe a strawberry, some berries, 500 calories in the shot. You do it for a limited amount of time. You do it for 3 weeks or you do it for 6 weeks and you maintain the weight. And I wanted to eat. And I thought to myself, I'm not hungry. She was right. I'm not hungry. Why do I want to eat right now? And I had never, ever asked myself that question. In 60 years of living, I had never asked myself the question, why do I want to eat right now? And so as I sat with that question, this story bubbled up. I'm from Texas. I'm from the South. I don't know if you can tell that from my accent or not. I went home one summer to visit my family. We were on my uncle's farm and we had watermelon. And my uncle was retired. My uncle was a merchant seaman. He had traveled all over the world. I mean, there was nothing in this world that he hadn't done or I didn't think that he could do. But he had retired. He's probably 70 years old. And my family were all on his farm. We had a barbecue cookout. We brought out the watermelon. And I asked him if he wanted some. And he said, no, I don't eat watermelon. I want you to understand, we had this conversation. It was the 1990s when we had this conversation. And I heard him then, but I didn't know what to listen for. I didn't know how important this conversation was going to be or even what it meant. I'm like, you don't eat it. There must be a reason. And he's like, no, I just don't eat it. I'm like, do you not like it? Do you want some later? I mean, and he just kept insisting I don't eat it. I just don't eat it. I'm like, there's got to be a story. There's got to be a reason you don't eat it. And he finally told me that when he was a kid, that he and some friends stole a watermelon from a neighbor's garden. And I want to pause right now and let you know that this was in the 1930s in the deep South in Texas. So understand, if you don't know what that landscape was like, it was really not really a safe time for Black folk, right? And it certainly was not, it was a very racist, segregated environment. So I just want to put that to the side for a moment. Yeah. When my grandfather found out my uncle had stolen this watermelon, he was not happy. In fact, he was very upset. And there were two things about my grandfather. My grandfather was a church trustee and my grandfather was a railroad worker. When my grandfather found out my uncle had stolen this watermelon, he beat my uncle. He beat him so severely in in the 1930s, that come the 1990s, my uncle still does not eat watermelon.
So it was basically a trauma-based.
It was trauma. I mean, and there's a phrase that we have, I'll beat the taste out of your mouth, right? And as horrible as it sounds, it's a true thing. My grandfather actually did that. Even when my uncle told me the story, then I said to him, Billy, do you think, well, maybe the lesson was supposed to be, thou shalt not steal? Maybe the lesson was supposed to be. And my uncle just looked at me and said, I don't eat watermelon. And that was it. He wasn't looking to change. He wasn't any of that.
Yeah.
Right? And when that story came into my consciousness, as I was asking, why do I want to eat right now? That story came up. It just popped in my head. I feel like it was God answering my prayer, because when I recalled that story, I understood it immediately. And I thought, my uncle did not eat watermelon because of what you just said, because of the trauma, because of the memory, because of the event, because of the experience. It was so closely associated with the food. When he thought about watermelon, he felt that beating. It was the same thing to him. Didn't want anything to do with it. He didn't want to be taken back to that place. And I thought, oh my God, this is it. This is what emotional eating is. This is what my thing is that the food that I overeat, the food that I just can't stop eating, it's not necessarily that I want the food. I want what the food represents. I want the pleasure. I want the experience. I want the memory. I want the event. I want that. It is not the food. And Henrietta, when I made that connection, it's just like, I think of my life before the watermelon story and after the watermelon story. Things shifted completely. And as I sat there in this awareness, right, this really new awareness, that's when I looked up the definition of food. So I took this awareness and I applied it to what I read, and I saw it right there. Food, nutrition, nourishment, energy. That is its only purpose. It is just fuel. And I got this instant clarity, and my life has never been the same since. That's when I did the TED Talk. The TED Talk was actually based on this. And so I go back to this story with my uncle, and I think about, I think that story is a great analogy in so many different ways when it comes to emotional eating. First of all, if my uncle had been by himself, he wouldn't have stolen the watermelon. It was a group thing, right? It's like, so, how many times when I don't know about you, I'm at home minding my own business and somebody calls me and says, oh, we're going out to eat. You want to go? I'm not even thinking about food, right? But yes, I want to go. I want to do what the group is doing. I want to be a part of that. That's all. That is all emotion, right?
Yeah.
It was summertime, Henrietta. They probably weren't even hungry. They were probably thirsty. How many times do we eat when we're really thirsty and we don't have the consciousness to sit and do it?
Yeah.
It was summertime. He and his little buddies, they're walking down the street, kicking a rock, kicking a ball, playing with a stick. They were looking for something fun. They were looking for something fun to do. Somebody said, how about this? Let's steal a watermelon. That'll be fun. They were looking for excitement. They were bored. So how many times I coach people all the time that say, oh, I eat while I'm bored. Right? Well, why on earth would you do that? Right? Because food doesn't solve boredom. Right? All it solves is hunger. That's the only thing it does.
Yeah.
So though you look at that and I'm like, oh man. And then I even think about my grandfather. What it meant to him. First of all, like I said, he was a church trustee. He was a railroad worker. He was not going to have anybody in that town thinking that, first of all, that he couldn't support his family. So it became a matter of pride, right? Frank Pettis' son, they caught him stealing. That was never going to happen, right? Because of being able to provide for his family, being able to have food in the 1930s after the Depression, he went to work every day, right? Being able to take care, that having food on the table meant something, right? Yeah. And so to have his son out there and having rumors going around that he wasn't able to do that, that was taking him. So how many times now do we eat out of status? We're going to go out to eat to, a 5-star restaurant. it's not about nutrition. It's about status and what it means to be what it means.
Yeah, it's most of the time it's nothing about the food. So all the eating disorders. I had an eating disorder myself when I was young, and that was a kind of classic story, but also related to basically conditioning, learning very early on in life that the way I was, for example, my mother expressed their love, their nurturing was basically feeding us, and to cook and just feeding everyone. And of course, both everyone in the family was a bit overweight, and then I was bullied for it by other kids for a long time, and that created a lot of trauma for me, and that led to an eating disorder. When I got a bit older, then I realized that I had that weight and I wanted to lose, and so then I felt old enough and being able to control my life enough so that I would just decide not to eat. So that was a very classic story, to become anorexic and bulimic, all that. But also that was not originally, the origin was not even related to self-image, because you mentioned yourself in the beginning that you also had these thoughts when you were bigger that, is there anyone else in the room that is bigger? Who is the biggest in the room? But many people believe that these eating disorders or food addictions are related to self-image, but there is usually something even deeper than that.
Yes.
What you just mentioned, but in my case, how my mother expressed their love, which is just good intention. It was just usually this is not really kind of abuse. It's just just people deal with life in different ways, and it leads to these consequences.
And you're right. It does come from a place of good intention, right?
Sometimes, not always, but yeah.
And we don't have a culture that wants us to know. What we have is a culture that's driven by the snack food companies, the fast food companies, and the processed food companies that want us to eat for every reason other than nutrition.
Yeah. Because their reward, just like we like the food to alleviate boredom, or it's a source of pleasure for the food companies. It's for the profit. That's their reward. So it's all the same. It's actually, when we study the brain, I did a lot of research on this, and we use very similar methods to basically study drug addiction and food addiction, and the way it works in the brain is very similar mechanistically. And so that's why it ultimately very often doesn't even matter if it's food, it's a drug, or any other behavior, relationship, even anything can become addictive. So so what was your solution in the end? How did you resolve?
Okay, so my solution, there's not one solution. Just let me say that.
Usually,
there's multiple things, but the key thing for me and what I teach is, first of all, you have got to be aware. We've got to get conscious. We have to understand. We have to know we have to know what real food is and what fake food is. We have to know that everything that we feel in our stomach is not hunger. So we have to know the difference between hunger and emotion, what that feels like. And when I do the research, and you can probably confirm this or affirm it or whatever, I do the research, and the research tells us that 75% of people say that they're emotional eaters. 75% say that. The other 25 they either just don't know it or they're just not admitting it. Everybody eats emotionally, and everybody eats.
Yeah, that's how we are actually conditioned, because it's in order, for everything, whenever we eat, it's actually, that's why people prefer usually food, even if it's not junk food, but, just, nutritious, normal food, but something that tastes good. At least it provides some level of pleasure, some level of positive reinforcement, as we call it. And all of it is emotional. Even normal it's emotional. So then there are these junk foods and the additives and those things that make the food even more palatable. That really trigger people. Those actually really stimulate those processes, mechanisms. So.
Yes, they do, and they know it. right? And so the manufacturers know it, but people don't know it. So
Yeah.
when we get aware and become conscious and understand that we're being manipulated, that
Yeah.
that there's a science behind it, that is neuroscience, and the neuromarketers know more about our brain and our motivations than what we do, right?
Yeah.
When we get smart about that, then we can start to get in front of it. Then we can start to pivot and shift and change. But the 75% of people that say, I'm an emotional eater, right? I eat because there's some sort of emotional reason,
Yeah.
right? And then over here, what we have are the solutions. So the solutions are the Atkins diet, the keto diet, the Mediterranean diet, surgery, medication, all that. All those things have nothing to do with emotion. So we have people that are saying my problem is emotion, but all the solutions that are provided have everything to do with behavior and action. And that's why we end up feeling so disillusioned, dissatisfied, not in getting the results that we want, feeling like we don't have any willpower, any self-control, or self-discipline, because the solutions don't fit what the actual problem is. The actual problem is not understanding the emotions, not recognizing the emotions, not knowing how to navigate them, not knowing what to do with them. What I do is I teach people what to do with the emotion. You mentioned it earlier. You talked about eating disorder. I would suggest that we're not dealing with eating disorders. Even though food is involved, what we're actually dealing with is thinking disorders. Because before we ever eat a single thing, because eating is a behavior, eating is an action, we have to think first. Something goes on in our head first. Ever gain a single pound on our body, or single extra ounce, or single extra anything, we gain it in our head first. But we have to lose it the same way. That's why the yo-yo dieting was such an issue for me, because I would get down to a 14, but in my mind, I was still a size 26. Our bodies follow our brain. So if we get the thinking right, if we get the believing right, if we get the mind, as my grandfather used to say, get your mind right. If you get your mind right, your body has to follow. So with writing, with meditation, with affirmation, with visualization, all those things allow us to retrain our brain. Those 4 things that don't get advertised, right, that aren't big money makers, but they are the key. They are the key to beating this thing. Because if you take the visualization, the affirmation, the meditation, and the prescriptive writing, and you apply it to all of these emotions that people don't know how to manage, which is what I teach people how to do. You visualize, you affirm, you meditate, and you write through 52 different emotions. I take people through on a 52-week journey of transformation, 1 emotion a week, a writing prompt every day that has you visualizing, affirming, writing, and meditating. At the end of 52 weeks, there will be 52 emotions that you know how to navigate that won't send you to food.
I have a question. So, does this process involve a similar, like really going back to the roots, just like that story that you mentioned in the beginning with the watermelon and, that kind of trauma? Do you investigate that?
I use a framework called Brand New. I teach people how to go through transformation by thinking in a brand new way. First, you have to believe it's even possible. For so many people, for so many of us, we've been unhealthy for so long. We don't even know what it looks like. We don't know what it feels like. And we think it's for other people and not for us because we've been told that. So first we have to begin to believe that it's possible and that we even deserve it. The second principle is to rise up and reinvent. So we do go back, and I encourage people to go back to their memories and look at these old stories and look at where these beliefs come from, right? Look at where these old stories are and rewrite them. Who did you see? What did you hear? Who told you that? What makes you think that's true? And then, is it really true? And then you write about that. So that's rise up and reinvent. You got to find the old story, rise up above it, and then create a new story that's empowering and takes you to where you want to go. I am a real proponent of the fact that you can't fix what you can't face. We do that with a partner every day, because this issue of food addiction and all, it's a part of the issue is being in a silo, being disconnected, being isolated, thinking you're the only one. There's some shame involved, and not knowing how to have a healthy relationship with not with just yourself, but with other people, because you spent so many years trying to have a relationship with food, which you can never have because food can never have a relationship with you. And that's part of the language, to change that language and that thought. So that alignment and accountability becomes really important to navigating these emotions and knowing that it's safe to express emotion, right? It's safe to have them. It's good to have them. Emotions aren't a bad thing. The next is nutrition and nourishment, which we talked about, right? We do a deep dive on what food really is. Getting the information. You know what? Do you know the truth about this? Do you really want this in your body? Do you want this? Do you know what the effects of this are? Let's think about that. The next is DSW. That's the D in brand new. I call it drink, sleep, and write. The 3 things I never did for 40 years. And I would always go on, what can I eat? How much of it can I have? That's what people always ask. I got to tell you something, Henrietta. When I started drinking the water, when I started getting the sleep, when I started doing the writing, that primed me to be able to stick to the diet, to eat the right things, to know what the right things are, right? And get that part right. Because I prepared myself with the sleep, right, to help with impulse control, getting the hydration so I wouldn't think that I was hungry when I was really thirsty, and then being able to write through these real things that were showing up. And I was thinking we're hungry, and they were not. Then no is the new yes. You have to decide what you want so that you can say no to what you don't want. Most people don't think about that. But when you write through that, when you talk about that, when you start to learn that your yeses can be real for you, then it makes it easy to say no to the stuff that's disempowering, that kills your health. Then eat, evaluate, ask, and think. I wrote my book in 2021. I figured this out in 2019. I still to this day, before everything I put in my mouth, I evaluate, ask, and think. Is it really food? Am I hungry right now, or am I feeling something else? Am I hungry? Am I tired? What just happened? What did I just see? Did somebody just say to me? What did I just think about it? Those questions give you an opportunity. They just to give yourself some space. Not to react in the moment, to make a decision that's rooted in nutrition, not in addiction, right? If you can do that, right? So that's eat.
All these that you just described, I just want to add that it's very, I love it because it's very consistent with how it works mechanistically in the brain. There is literally almost like two opposite poles in the brain, pathways kind of fighting with each other. We even call them go and no pathways. So you in your case, go and eat the food. No go means that don't stop and think, and if it's not good for me, then say no and abandon the behavior. And so these strategies that you are using, it's very easy for me to imagine how they actually strengthen the healthy versions of those mechanisms, because it's nice, it's stepwise as well, because people who have addictions, usually they get a really big imbalance between these pathways. So basically, what I mentioned, this kind of opposing forces. The one that says go or do something becomes dominant, and it's hard to say no and control. And so all these different steps to evaluate, to writing itself can reinforce, it can make newer realizations, insights much more ingrained for us. And that's why people journal and all that. So that's a very good first step. Is it easy for them immediately to apply them and change, or do they struggle?
It takes practice. You can get the awareness instantly. I mean, you can know it intellectually, just like immediately. Oh, okay, I get it. But you still have to practice, because now you are employing new habits. And we also have to just realize that we have a environment that doesn't want us to adopt these new habits. This constant messaging that tells you you're not right, that's encouraging to eat. So it takes a supportive environment, and it takes doing it over and over and over again, and hearing the same thing over and over again, and creating, the writing does this, creating new neural pathways so that you can take your brain back. No, it's just like I talk about babies walking. They fall down, right? They see the walking people, they want to do it, but they hold on to the wall, they hold on to somebody's hand, they walk, they practice it every day, and the next thing you know, they're not crawling, they're walking, then they're running. But you don't just get up and walk one day and then sit down and then you're walking. This is a skill.
This is actually how even the addiction, the emotional eating develops in the first place, because it's not like, and even substance addiction, substance problems, every kind of addictive behavior. It's not like someone engages in a behavior and it's immediately becomes, it takes over everything. So it's also in the first place when it develops via many repetitions. And that's what we call reinforcement. So literally that's what it means, reinforcement. It's a feedback that, in the first place, the food tastes good, and, it basically helps with the emotions and all that. And through many repetitions, the brain learns to repeat the process. And what you are doing is creating a mechanism that is basically works in the same way. It's by creating another cycle and just keep repeating it.
That's it. It's a reverse order, and that's why the group is so important. That's why having a partner is so important. I'm like, are you kidding me? 1 pound is fabulous. We got to celebrate the one like it's 100, right? Because that takes us to number 2. You got to lose in order to lose 100. You got to lose 1, and so we celebrate that. We celebrate that big, and we keep reinforcing that. You feel good about that 1. You feel happy about that 1 that propels you to the 2, right? And so it's having a community that celebrates that for you sometimes when you can't celebrate it for yourself. Because the transformation doesn't happen you don't just blink and you're transformed, but it does happen if you do it a little bit every day. A little bit every day over 365 days, you wake up at the end of the year, you'll be completely different.
Is it always done in groups?
It's done in groups, yes.
And how large are the groups? How many people?
It varies. It varies. It could be from 4 to 20. It just kind of depends.
So they definitely seem to get a lot of positive reinforcement from this, even realizing that they need to, it's worth celebrating small wins, because that's people get discouraged. It's very similar to people who are trying to quit their drug use. It's all basically the same, many of the same mechanisms. So, and how long does this process usually take when it gets to a point that someone is confident that they can leave this group and manage their eating, their life on their own?
I mean, it's a year.
Yeah.
And after a year, you have the tools, right? We're always going to be in this environment that's assaulting us with messages that want us to go back. So even though you might have the tools, you might know what to do, you want to continue to stay in a protected community that keeps you armored up, because they're always coming out with new stuff, right? To pull you back over. But there's something that's called, have you heard of this? It's called the circle of mastery.
I think so.
Right. So then you see it, you do it, and then you teach it. As you complete the program, when you come out and you're strong in 52 weeks, guess what? There's some more people that have enrolled in the program that you can mentor, and as you are supporting them in their journey to become stronger, you become stronger too. I'm still discovering stuff about myself that I'm happy that I'm discovering, that I wouldn't have discovered had I not discovered the stuff that I discovered yesterday. So it doesn't stop.
How do you define success with this program? Or is it something that, do you have a general universal definition of when it has worked, when someone is recovered, or it just depends on the person or their individual goals?
I don't determine the success.
Okay.
I don't determine the person in the program.
Yeah, they do. Okay.
They determine the success. And so while this is for people that are looking for new ways to manage food addiction and manage their weight, it's this program is this, but it's really not. What this program really is, a way for you to learn how to manage and navigate your emotions and losing the weight and being more empowered in your life losing the weight is a byproduct. This is all skill building. This is all muscle building. This is
Yeah.
all finding your voice, believing in your own voice, believing that rather than leaning into the food. Rarely do people, if ever, lead with "I lost this amount of weight." They lead with, "Here's what I learned about betrayal.
Mhm.
Here's what I learned about feeling insecure. Here's what I learned about self-doubt. Here's what I learned about frustration. I didn't even know that was fear. I didn't know that was anger."
So basically, they get in touch with their emotions better, and they also learn to regulate their emotions with these tools much better. I really love the part that there is no like expectation. So, for example, if they don't have to lose weight or a certain amount of weight, because that's why many of those medical programs or diets fail, because that's the goal, like you said in the beginning. And so here it's even if I imagine even if they don't lose a lot of weight, but they learn to regulate their emotions better, they can still figure it out in their own time, in their own way, maybe later on, whatever. But I guess the goal of this is to become more familiar with the emotional landscape and more skilled at regulating the emotions in a healthy way. And then it's very easy to see why it can, if someone really picks this up, why it can have many benefits on different areas of life. This usually happens the same with people who recover from substance use. It goes on forever that discovering that once you learn to self-regulate, and then how well this can apply to all kinds of situations in life, regardless of what the actual problem is. And again, it's because these mechanisms all work in the same way in the brain, so it's wonderful. So is there anything like, because I always like when I think about personalization, what kind of treatment would be best for someone? Your program, is there anything about it that this program is most suitable for certain types of individuals with certain backgrounds and maybe less so for others? Is there anything like this?
Yeah, so I have thought about that. That is a really good question. This program really resonates with people who are two things, who are open-minded and like to write. Because it is
There is a lot of writing, okay.
it's a lot of writing, right? It's a lot of writing. And so you might not like to write, but if you're open-minded to the fact that writing could be the tool that will get you the freedom and the joy and the peace, right? And the power that nothing else has been able to provide for you, then it'll work for you. If you are ready, I can't convince you to be ready. I can't convince somebody to be ready. And I don't want to work with anybody that's not ready.
Fortunately, that's true for every kind of, addiction recovery, that we can provide tools, wonderful tools that fits with different individuals. But one thing we cannot provide, what you said, is readiness and also motivation, like steady, constant motivation to actually apply the tools, because it's from my own history. I had a long period in my life and I had the substance use issues that I knew everything about addiction. That's why I got into addiction research and the different treatments. I was really a proficient about all those, but I just didn't apply them to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So and that part is very, very hard to transmit to another person, this type of readiness or motivation that I'm actually going to do the action steps.
When I talk about the being ready and the writing, there's this a phrase that's like, you feel the fear and do it anyway.
Do it scared.
It is not the diet, it is the desire.
Yeah.
Because we have a food culture, we have a toxic food environment that is constantly creating desire for that which is killing us.
And that desire, or we also often call it craving, or urges.
Yes,
addictive.
Yes.
So that's basically what causes the continuing the behavior. So for example, in my case, for my substance use, I had to be on medication. I use medication that actually interferes with it, that reduce the cravings, the intensity of the cravings, and that's what saved me, because before I would always I would do all the wonderful use the tools and so exercises and everything, but once a craving hits, a strong intense cravings, that all goes out
Right.
of the
It goes
window,
out the
right?
I
So
get it.
you need to, I think that's one of the most important parts of the whole recovery process, to deal with those cravings.
Yes, yes. And so, there's a process that I use, especially around food cravings. Back to this, I will tell you about it, but back to this thing for desire. One of the ways that the writing helps is that when you're able to create desire for that which honors your body,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
honors your health, when you're able to write that picture, lean into that picture, and have more desire for that which serves you on a higher level, right? And that's building that story. It's like digging into that. I want this more than I want that. I had somebody tell me one time. They said, I love going out to brunch and hanging and having wine with my friends on the weekend. It was like I love doing that. And my question to her was, is it possible that you can change what you love?
override that desire, speaking
Yep.
about writing, it literally, it's kind of in the brain, the memories, the
Yep.
emotional memories
Yep.
that facilitate this, that reinforce this cycle. You have to override it with a different
Yep.
thought process and different priorities and different preferences. Is there anything specific that people tend to struggle with the most with, all these different steps? What tends to be most difficult?
Yeah, probably the fact that everybody's timeline is different. I may assign an emotion a week, but just because I assign an emotion a week doesn't mean that that's when that emotion is going to come up for
Right.
you. So it might come up next week. It might come up 3 months from now, right? It's the people struggle with the fact that this isn't linear. It can be working, but you might not feel like it's working.
Yeah.
It can be working and you're so used to having an expectation that results are going to look a certain way, or you're tied to that, and then you feel like it's not working because it's not showing up like you want it to show up. When people get it, when they give themselves some grace, right? When they're patient, when it clicks, got it.
This is usually the case, very often the case where with the appropriate treatment, when people find the right treatment for them, for an addiction. I experienced this very much, Lisa, after many years of, trying things and failing most of the time. And once you find something that is the right thing for you, then, and it clicks, then it becomes so much easier. And,
Yes.
But what you said about trusting the process, to put it that way, it's very important, because a lot of all these emotional processes and recovery are actually happening unconsciously, even the development addiction in the first place. Most of these decision-making processes and the emotions in the brain, we are not aware of them. It's
Right.
the decision is already made, and then we just become aware of them. So it's a very good strategy to learn to realize that we don't need to worry about this all the time, that is it working, is it not working. I remember this from my own life very well, that just trust the process. If it's the right process, then but evaluate at different stages, because it's also not a good idea that if it's really not working, just keep repeating again something that doesn't work. So how does the group meet? Is it online or in person?
So the group meets online.
Online.
The group meets once a week. I meet with the group. We come together as a group once a week online on Mondays. But then you meet with your partner, your accountability partner. You decide if you want to do it with text. You decide if you want to do it on the phone. You decide if you want to do it on Zoom. But I have a writing prompt and a question that you unpack together every day, and then we come back together as a group once a week, and we reveal and discuss our insights as a group.
It's a very positive atmosphere and reinforcement in many ways. So how can people learn more about this?
Anybody that's interested can email me directly at michelle@michellpetties.com. I know a lot of people don't give out the email addresses. I do. I answer every email. I am online on Instagram at I am brand new now. You can reach out to me on I am brand new now. Also, I want to support people wherever they are, because I know it's possible. I know what joy there is on the other side of this addiction. I know what freedom there is, and I know it's possible. I know it's not too late. If I can figure it out at 60, then
Never too late. Yeah. Thank you very much for all the insight.
Thank you, Henrietta. It's been a joy. I appreciate you so much.